So Attack on Titan Season 4 Episode 21 was an absolute banger. The last few episodes of Attack on Titan have been absolute peak fiction, if I'm being completely honest. This episode was titled From You 2000 Years Ago. If you read the manga, that title should seem familiar and should make complete sense to you. If you're an anime only watcher, then it might be a little bit confusing, but don't worry, it will all make sense after watching and understanding this video. This episode was based off one of my favourite chapters, chapter 122. So the last episode, Zeke wanted to convince Eren that he had been brainwashed by their father, Grisha Yeager, to become an alien restorationist. So Zeke explored his mind, but realised that he wasn't who he thought he was. This episode begins with Grisha crushing the Rice family, and it's completely brutal. Right after this, we see Zeke finally talk to Eren. His father's actions weren't really his own actions. Zeke realizes that Eren manipulated Grisha, and realizes that Eren is the one who pushed Grisha to killing the royal family, and by extension, to fight the rest of the world. But by considering that the Attack Titan can transcend time, he's surprised that Eren also showed events to Grisha that weren't favourable to him. Zeke concludes that Grisha was actually willing to steal the Founding Titan, even though he could not use it himself, because of a different memory that Eren had shown him, meaning Eren does have control over what memories he can show people. Eren thanks Zeke for making his plan completely possible, for bringing him to the paths, for allowing him into Grisha's memories. When he kissed Historia's hand 4 years ago, he saw inside Grisha's memories, and within them, he saw his future self and the sight of things to come. Zeke panics and shouts for Ymir to steal the ability to reproduce from all the subjects of Ymir. He needs to fulfill his euthanization plan, causing the girl to turn away and walk towards the coordinate. He tells Eren that he does not know what kind of future he saw in Grisha's memories, but he did not see everything, just as he himself did not know that he would be unable to use the power of a founder here. Eren is still shackled to the ground, but he frees himself by pulling so hard with his willpower that both his thumbs rip off. He then chases after Ymir, as Zeke tells him that it is pointless. There is nothing in the world he could do now to stop her march. As Eren approaches her, something does happen. I'm not sure, maybe this is the power of a founder, but without making contact, a flashback is activated. In his flashback, we see Frieda Rice, who tells her younger half-sister Historia that she should be like the girl in the storybook she was reading, because she is kind and always thinking of others. This is quite interesting since the name of the girl in the book is Krista. Krista being the girl who made the deal with the Earth Devil to gain the power of the Titans. Krista is kind, polite, and selfless. Historia would go on to take on this name as her own, in a facade. These traits were also emulated by Historia, until she would go on to escape this facade by realizing that she needs to live for herself and not for others. In reality, she's the opposite of Krista. She isn't kind, she isn't polite, she isn't selfless. Historia was creating a facade. I remember what Isayama said, he doesn't like people who lie. From a story circumstance, to lie means to twist the character's original will or resolve. If you guys didn't know already, this episode reveals that Krista is in fact Ymir the founder. That's who the book is talking about, Ymir the founder's history. This is clearly setting up a parallel between the two characters of Historia and Ymir Fritz, since both have a very similar appearance, obviously via their blonde hair and blue eyes, and interestingly enough they're related by blood since Ymir is Historia's ancestor, meaning she is of royal descent and should be capable of controlling the Founding Titan, meaning Eren could have technically used her instead of Zeke to begin the rumbling. It's not really explained why he can't use her as part of his plan, but I assume it has something to do with her pregnancy. It's probably too dangerous for her to attempt something like this, since I assume the two merged together during this process, which may harm the baby. They have made contact in the past when Eren kissed her hand, but the only thing that happened was Eren seeing the future because of this. Eren has, according to John, made contact with her many times after this, trying to see more memories and activate more of the Founding Titan's abilities, but has been unsuccessful. So Historia does seem to be a parallel of Ymir's character, since both were at one point meaningless. In fact, both being pregnant makes them share commonality together. Anyway, back to the episode. We are taken back 2,000 years ago, back when the Eldians were an ancient tribe led by a man called Fritz, who slaughtered countless people and took their land, not to be confused with his descendant, also called Fritz. The Eldians enslaved Ymir's village, however the girl lived in a harsh time where people were enslaved by this Eldian tribe. All of a sudden one day, a slave lets a pig escape. Fritz, as tribal leader, calls for his slaves to identify the culprit, or gouge out the eyes of each of them. The other slaves point to a single girl, that girl being Ymir. She is surprised but bows her head and takes the blame. Now her releasing the pig could be in reference to her seeking freedom, since a pig is a farm animal, held in captivity. And we also know Eren hates when animals are held in captivity, since they lack freedom. So here we can start drawing parallels between Eren and Ymir already, showing that they do kind of relate to each other and can understand each other. Perhaps Eren doesn't want to accept that his people are being breeded like animals just to be slaughtered. Anyway, as punishment, Ymir is let loose in the forest and chased by hunters on horseback with dogs and arrows. She begins to run. She is struck multiple times by these arrows. However, her willpower allows her to continue to run until she finds a gigantic tree with a crevice at the base of its trunk. Ymir walks inside and stumbles into a chasm where she falls headfirst and lands into the water. And that's when she begins to sink. Now this is very similar to the Akatsuki no Requiem ending. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's the one with Historia in it, but the imagery is almost identical to this story, where we see Historia run across a field of flowers just like Ymir did when running in the forest, as her blood drops and hits one of these flowers, just like it did for Ymir. We then also see her fall into a puddle, where she begins sinking just like Ymir when she falls into this chasm. And then Ymir comes into contact with a weird substance beneath her. It begins to line up with her spine, and the tendrils of it reach up to her back as she drifts down. The forest erupts and a tree falls, as Ymir emerges as the first Titan. She has finally merged with this hallucigenia, gaining the power of a founding Titan. Returning to the episode, Fritz keeps Ymir as a slave and puts her to work. By the time she's an adult, he's made her build roads, cultivate the land, made bridges between mountains, allowing for the Eldian tribe to prosper. Fritz decides that she will bear his children at a very young age, that being a cruel reality of the past, and sends her to annihilate the people of Marley, which she does with brutal effectiveness. And this would explain why the people of Marley really do hate the Eldians. They were powerless against them when they had the power of the Titan. Ymir saves King Fritz's life multiple times. Time passes as Ymir bears children for Fritz. In between fighting his battles, when the Marley officers kneel before Fritz, one of them rises in retaliation and throws his spear at him. Ymir intervenes, letting the spear impale her. Through her shoulder, she collapses in front of Fritz as her daughters look in horror. Fritz is somewhat surprised, but ultimately he asks what she's doing. Since that spear shouldn't be able to kill her, he knows she has the ability to regenerate, and he commands her to rise, calling her his slave once more, but she does not. It seems to me that Ymir wants to escape this life, escape this world, gain freedom from this title as a slave, since she's done nothing but listen to him since gaining this power. She has all the power in the world, but she's still bound by one single person. Since she has such a little confidence in herself, she built a facade so she would make herself important to the people around her. Just like Historia did within Season 2. And Eren completely understood this. He says if we don't care about ourselves, then this cruel world will take everything away from us, just like it has Ymir. So Eren can relate even more to Ymir now he knows this. So after her death, Fritz cuts up Ymir's body and has her daughters Maria, Rose and Sheena eat her. These names probably sound familiar since these are the names given to the wars on Paradis Island. Fritz's final command to his daughters was to bear as many children as possible and multiply so the blood of Ymir does not die out. Ymir's titans will live on forever. As long as their blood exists, this curse will never end. When they die, they themselves are in turn to have themselves fed to their own children, so the power is forever passed down, and the Eldians will rule the land forever, via the use of their massive titans. And as you remember, this was actually one of the plans that Eren rejected earlier on, when Historia offered to bear as many children as possible, but then have her children eat her, so then the royal-blooded children can still exist and use the founding titan to activate the rumbling when need be. Eren hated the idea of humans being farmed like cattle, so completely rejected this plan. Now there is a very interesting conversation that will happen in the later episodes. You guys know what I'm talking about if you are manga readers, but I'm not going to talk about it here because there's a lot of anime-only people watching this video as well. Anyway, back to the present, well in the paths where things are timeless. Eren grabs a hold of Ymir while they are inside the paths and tells her that this ends now. He asks her to lend him his strength, so he can put an end to this world, so he can put an end to this curse. Eren tells her that she is not a slave, she is not a god, she is just a person born into this world. Eren's ideology is aligned with his mother's, Carla Yeager, who believed every person born into this world has a right to freedom since they have inherent value. So this is when Eren tells Ymir that she has a right to choose, rather than to serve. I remember watching one of Anime Balls Deep's analysis videos. He basically talks about how this speech Eren gave is not necessarily paralleled, but very similar to the speech that Historia gave to Eren back in the cave, where she quite literally talked about not wanting to be a slave, or not wanting to be a god, but rather wanting to put an end to the world, and being an enemy to humanity. Which is literally the same thing that Eren said right here. Historia calls herself the worst girl in the world because of this, and all of this kind of makes sense now. Since it was all a facade, her trying to be Ymir and pretending to be this Krista girl. So Krista was meant to be this good girl who listened to all the people around her and had nothing to say for herself because she was polite and selfless. So Ymir was the good girl. However, Historia is the complete opposite. She is, in her own words, the worst girl in the world. So there's this contrasting. They've now become complete opposites once this facade has been left behind. And now Eren is trying to get Ymir the founder to drop her facade in the exact same way. He seeks to free and liberate Ymir so that they can become the enemies of humanity. And this moves us on to the slave-master relationship. Ymir had always seen herself as a slave to Karl Fritz. She was bound to him for some unknown reason. Now this is a curse similar to the one that the Ackermen have shown, such as Levi towards Erwin, or Mikasa towards Eren, since you're literally forced to protect those who have either saved you or those you love. Whether it's genetic or not, it's not revealed yet in the anime, but we do know this applies to people who aren't Ackermen as well, such as Nico when he cared about Sasha. There's a piece of extra material that came out around the same time as chapter 122 about Ymir releasing the pig. It says that she seeks a world free of fate and curses, and now this is what all of this might be in reference to. She was waiting 2,000 years for someone to lift this curse from her. This curse of being bound into the world. This curse of having a facade. There's many curses within Attack on Titan that need to be resolved. So after all of this, back to the episode, seeing this, Zeke panics and runs after Eren because he knows what is about to happen and what he's about to attempt. Zeke yells and commands for a second time, telling Ymir to sterilize all the subjects of Ymir and reminds her that he is the one of royal blood, it's not Eren. But Ymir has already made up her mind. Warhammer begins to crumble, freeing all of the Colossus Titans before he can reach through to her. Eren cradles Ymir close and asks if she was the one who led him here. She must have been waiting for 2,000 years for somebody like Eren to come along. And we see Ymir tear up as she begins to cry. Ymir lifts her head. Back to the Shinganshina district. This weird hallucinogenia substance connects Eren's decapitated head with his body as his head rests in Zeke's hand. Zeke has managed to catch his brother's head, and now the rumbling will begin. As Warhammer begins to shatter beneath and around the combatants, the wall crumbles, revealing the Colossus Titans within them, and there's millions. As a skeleton of another Titan rises in front of Gabi, Armin and Mikasa hypothesize that Eren is only going to do a partial rumbling. Everybody watches Eren begin this rumbling. Then Eren summons every Eldian to the paths to talk to them. He tells them that the hatred that the world has towards the Eldians has grown beyond reason, and that he has no choice now but to destroy the rest of the world. He can't gamble the future of paradis. He has to do what is necessary, as all of these events end on a massive cliffhanger. Now, why is the title of this episode so important? I may have been foreshadowing this right at the beginning of the video, and I'll tell you why. That's because the first ever episode of Attack on Titan is called To You 2,000 Years From Now. This episode is titled From You 2,000 Years Ago, meaning it's like the reverse of the first episode. So what does that tell us? That tells us that the first episode was probably Ymir trying to tell Eren something or send a message to him at the beginning of the series. Which makes sense, I told you that it was Ymir leading Eren here. She was the one waiting for Eren to arrive and to save her 2,000 years later. However, it could be in reference to something far more interesting, if you think it suggests some sort of time loop, but I'll save that for another video. If you guys want to know what it could be related to, watch this video right here. It's to do with an anime only ending. I recommend only watching this if you've read the manga, since there will be a few spoilers. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. I'll continue to make more videos on topics you like, so let me know what videos you want to see as well. But until then, I'll see you later. Peace.